What's that? Oh, I want to.
I'll swap it.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Come on now. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for coming. Pay respect to my brother. I ask you to take a seat, and we'll start the sort of formal part, and then those of us who haven't eaten yet can eat, and those of us, I don't know if I should start by saying grace or what the story was for that. If you notice in some of the pictures, Ray is wearing this t-shirt. I survived the 60s twice. Now, when I saw it, I bought it for him because this is really Ray. Our reflection today will focus on Raymond in two sections of his life. Now, there are two distinct crowds here today, the one that knew him in the 60s and the one that knew him in his 60s. So we're going to kind of weld the two of you together for this particular reflection on life. There we are. Now, as a boomer, I have to say this in advance. Technology and boomers are an oxymoron. That's the oxy, and I'm the moron. Just to be clear. So I can promise you something inspiring, but not smooth. Two things is too much. Let me just see. Sorry, Raymond, I'm just going to have to get rid of you here, buddy. Oh, my golly. Thank you. It worked in practice. There we go. Okay. We'll have to stick with that one. One of the most poignant memories of our family's life was the early 60s, 1960s. Dad became sick and was hospitalized, and Mom had 5 kids, 8 and under, and a tough, rugged Irish 80-year-old dad who lived with us. A few of us were so young that we didn't fully realize the steady, generous, and gracious presence of Grandpa Callahan. That was the best and the safest lap on the planet, and he made you feel it was for you alone, even though he included all of us. While many of us were too young to remember, Ray did, and Ray lived that through. Ray vowed to, let me see, get this picture up there. See, told you. That's the oxy. Where did I lose that? Oh, there you go. Should be. That's always my words. Should be. There you go. Okay. Ray vowed to watch over us. And in keeping with the Callahan and Hosick tradition, he was generous, compassionate, and opinionated. That doesn't surprise any of you, does it? The 60s were a time of change. Suddenly, everything became questioned and challenged, and Ray reflected that. That was the guide to us to be ourselves, to find our way and to make up our own minds on things. Well, Dad came from a generation where conformity was the only option. Can you see the problem arising here? Sometimes at our dinner table, it would be like watching two scorpions. We learned to stand back and watch. No way would we get involved or take sides in that one. In the First Nations culture, men tease each other. It's a way of showing affection, how we learn how to tell the truth gently, and we challenge the ego, and that allows us to laugh at ourselves. Well, just let me give you a personal example. In my first year of Sundance, I was terrified of making a mistake as a white man in an indigenous culture. After each round, Brett, an elder, would come to the teepee and encourage us. One round, he looked at me and said, "You dance like a crazy seagull." I burst out laughing. Because at that moment, I recognized I'm seen as being clumsy and awkward and full of mistakes. But I needed to not take myself too seriously, so I couldn't laugh at myself. When I can laugh at myself, I can see myself for what I am and know that my mistakes can be overcome. Teasing, when done right, can be graceful, corrective, and funny. Does anybody remember whether Ray teased or not? Yeah, oh, here we go. Okay, it took Ray a bit of time to learn that craft, though. He learned how to stand up to Dad, often in funny ways that would even make Dad laugh at himself. It was part of the Hosick tradition to tease, but teasing would sometimes become mean-spirited, vicious, and humiliating. We all have to learn to strike a balance. And sometimes after things have been said, we can choose whether we want to store those events as grudges or as moments of reflection. In those moments of reflection, we take time to consider the impact of the event and whether we want to keep the battle going or let it subside gracefully. It's only when a relationship is broken into 1,000 pieces that with no hope of repair will we take time to consider the impact, even when it's too late. It's a promise to correct and stop stinging each other. Ray and I were on opposite sides of the family chronologically. He would be a scorpion for things he thought were of good order and morals. I was the scorpion of opportunity. He protected the family, and I ate them. But Ray would not tolerate it, even if he said nothing. The change for me came when Ray started to slip. He needed us to be there the way he used to be there for us. And there was no question. I learned from him that I could still be an opportunist, but to witness pain and to share compassion instead of being it for my gain. Thank you, Raymond. In the fire service, we have what we call, because we work with knots, there's a kind of knot we call a jackknife knot. Does anybody know what a jackknife knot is? So a jackknife knot is where both sides have pulled on it so long and so hard, like a tug of war, and the knot is so tight, the only solution is a jackknife. The cut is made, the conflict is over, but now both sides must decide if it's worth the risk to join together. Sometimes trust, respect, and safety has eroded to the point where it's not safe to connect the ropes. Ray spoke to me with deep regret about how knotted relationships became for him and how he could not repair some. In his conflict with Dad, Ray learned to prioritize safety and to make room for Dad to be his quirky self. Mom would often respectfully lean on Ray for assistance, and Ray would always step up. So let me set the stage for our first musical number. When Ray defined his pathway, he often did it in contrast to what Dad would do. Dad was unstructured, Ray was very structured. He learned details and consequences, and he connected his own power as a person. If you look at him, he was a muscle man, a weightlifter with muscle car and keen awareness. And adrenaline in a muscle car means speed. Let me create this picture. Sometime after Mom had grown weary of driving to the cottage, particularly after sitting on the side of a road in a VW Bug, after the dog puked on Jim and the raccoon got out of his box and started a fight with the cat, enlisting Joan and me to untangle the mammalian equivalent of a mixed martial arts fight to the finish, us three kids were yelling at the chaos. Well, the cat saw it as a kite to the finish. The raccoon was quite entertained. Ray, henceforth, drove to the cottage. He was careful, cautious driver, even when adrenaline in a muscle car meant speed. Now, imagine we're all getting in Ray's car, and we're driving to the cottage. Here's a song that would come on the radio that would inspire Ray's adrenaline, and adrenaline in a muscle car means speed. Did I say that already? Some of you will feel it. Some of you will know that's going through it. And some of you will put on the gas. Well, others of you who may not know this version of Ray will hang on tight. So you decide who you are in the car, the one watching Ray drive the car or being Ray himself. So let me play this song for you. Those of you who are not as old as us may not remember this song. Let me just see now. Okay, here we go. Whoops, sorry. Wrong. What? I can't stop the movement, so you're going to have to put up with me. Anybody remember the song? Here we go again. You get the point. Now you can understand that Mom, appreciative of the drive, would sit in the back seat with a newspaper obscuring her view. You can also appreciate that the song only lasted 3.5 minutes. Which is longer than I lasted this time. Whew. The rope was cut for Ray in some of his most important relationships, not just with Dad, and he couldn't repair it. He spoke with deep regret. He had traded power for connection and was now powerless to make it better. Here is the second 60s. Oh, catch my breath here for a second. After a dark time of despair and reflection, Ray's qualities of respect, protection, and loyalty returned. He was finally settled at D&D. He was living in a long-term work relationship that had developed competence, confidence, and situational awareness. He was elected shop steward and then eventually union president. Ray took courses in mediation, communication, situational awareness, and leadership. It was bittersweet in some ways. As he learned new skills, he learned the impact of not having those skills on others. Ray was given more responsibility, more trust. Oh yeah, right, come on now, man. Excuse me just for a second. Now there's my text just went down to 4 points. I don't know if you know how small that is, but because there we go. Try that one more time. Oh man, there we go. Okay. Thank you. Told you it's not going to be smooth. Ray was given more responsibility, more trust, and he even took every part seriously. He was very, very popular union president. Through his work, he met Sylvie. Now, I don't know if you know much about her, but Sylvie, Jess, and Nicholas have their own relationship wounds. Sylvie learned to be efficient, compassionate, and to smell bullshit from 200 yards. Sylvie embodies the skill of diplomacy. She can tell you to go to hell in such a way you look forward to the trip. As their relationship grew, they decided first to respect each other, then trust each other, and then love each other. But what he valued most was the relationship he had with Jess and Nicholas. He was the dad they needed. They were the son and daughter he could love in his best way and the way he knew how. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was wonderful to see Ray recognize an opportunity for redemption. He was in with both feet. With competition weeded out from the family garden, they included each other and let each other grow. I remember when I was little, my mom would tell me stories about Ray. I always wanted to hear them. Ray was adopted, and where sometimes adoption means second-class family member, Mom was very, very clear. Ray was deliberately and intentionally chosen. He was always known as the chosen one. I love that image because I chose to adopt Ray. Adoption goes two ways. Not only does a family adopt a child, but the child makes adoption complete by adopting the family as his own. Ray adopted us, and we all belong together. It would never be any other way. Ray recalled a time when he had a paper route on Jeffcoat, and sometimes he would take Andrea, once. When he went to collect the money for the papers, Andrea would say, "And this is my brother Ray, and he's adopted." At every house. He was adopted, but didn't want to be reminded. His family was enough, and he was enough. That theme rose again, and much to our family's joy, Sylvie, Jess, and Nicholas adopted him as his own, as their own, and he adopted them as his own. Raymond was home. We had a deeply loved uncle, Uncle Frank, who saw us as children and respected us as individuals. When Uncle Frank got cancer, and I started to think about the meaning of Frank's life for me, and I asked the question, why do I wait until after he dies before I share the things I want to say? So I wrote Uncle Frank a letter to tell him how important he was to me. When Ray was diagnosed with early dementia, we siblings all decided to write a letter to Ray and answer 3 questions. We gave it to Sylvie to read to him during those dark hours, those times of despair, uncertainty, and weakness. We wanted him to know the impact of his life on us. So we each wrote him a letter. From Jeffy, the youngest in the family. You just never lived down those nicknames. Dear Ray. Yep. There you go. Thank you. Okay. We, as your siblings, agreed to write you a letter for those times when you feel alone, frightened, overwhelmed, and chaosed, and exhausted. I can only imagine how disorientating the world can be from you from time to time. I wanted us to write these letters and to respond to 3 questions. One of the most enduring things I appreciate, the questions were, what was important about Ray being on the planet for you? And the second question was, what characteristics of Ray impressed you or influenced you the most? And the third question was, what have you done with the gifts that he's given you? That's the questions that we asked. One of the more enduring things I appreciate about you, Ray, was that you were way more of a dad to me than my dad. You took me to church, to hockey games. I remember feeling so protected because you took me under your wing. Now, this is Ray before diplomacy, okay? So imagine me, it's the only time I ever played net in my hockey career, and I think I retired at Bantam, so I was very young. First time I played net, Ray would drive me back and forth to hockey, and so he was always showing concern. So there he was, standing at the boards, and he sells out in his most subtle voice, "Hey, are you wearing a cup?" Thanks, Ray. As I waved to the crowd. He was louder than the loudspeaker. Whether it was pushing me on a sled, going down for groundhog hunting, buying me a football, or tossing me out of an upside-down Volkswagen trunk lid about to hit a telephone pole as Dad drove down the road to get a broken TV from the Silks. I felt the way was cleared for me. I remember when I was playing hockey on the driveway. Jimmy shot right, Dad shot right, but I shot left, like my brother Ray. I appreciated how you blazed the trail for us to follow. Often hearing Dad's reaction, I'd know whether to do what you did, or do what Jimmy did, or follow my own path stealthily. I really appreciated it. It puts us at odds sometimes. As I said, you were often at 2 ends of the family. While you were looking out for us, I would be looking at every opportunity for my advantage. Your laughter was music to me. You were always more introverted than others, and you did so quietly, but your humor allowed me to feel joy. I was so pleased to make you laugh. One of the enduring things that you gave me was a window on the 60s. Boomers were a generation of siblings, not authority. Much of it passed by before me before I had the words to describe it. But I saw most of the music groups and the cultural leaders, because you were only 8 years older than me, I saw them as my siblings too. A new language, a new music, a new direction, and mostly the music of the 60s, and became the soundtrack of my life. Oh, and Raymond, the lyrics are not, "and there is a bathroom on the right." We had a discussion about that as a family. He was convinced, as Raymond always is, No, it's a bad moon on the rise, right? Not a bathroom on the right. Always appreciated your ability to size up situations. I remember hearing a story about you as a kid on the playground. The way I remember the story, you were on a teeter-totter with a girl who jumped off, sending you crashing to the ground. Think of this, the Raymond you know. Figure out how he's going to react to this, right? You were mad. And as she laughed at you, she inadvertently wandered under her end of the teeter-totter. You sized up the situation, and you very intentionally cracked her on the noggin with her end of the teeter-totter. I was impressed with his knowledge of physics, of being able to figure that out. I'm not sure if it's a true story, but you made an awareness of your abilities, and most importantly, not to piss you off. One story I remember, when it was just Ray and Andrea, Mom and Dad took them tobogganing. And on the last run of the day, Andrea was plopped in the front and Ray was on the back. With the speed you were going and the direction you were heading, you figured out pretty quickly that the sled would exit the gate and onto the street. You did the most sensible thing. You bailed, leaving Andrea oblivious to her destiny. The sled went right across the road just as you projected and went under the car, leaving Andrea's face to gently mush into the car's door. Another moment which stands out for me, your friend Rick, the police officer who stopped in when I was visiting you in Alliston. He looked at me, he looked at you and said, "Geez, by looking at the two of you, I never would have guessed you were brothers." I had no need to explain. Inside, I was responding, saying, "Yeah, we may not look similar on the outside, but deep down, I'm honored to be made myself to be like him." You got to do the coolest stuff, Raymond. Raymond driving to Moncton. Raymond buys a Yamaha racing snow machine. Raymond drives all the way to Nova Scotia, marathon style, in one shot, gets overwhelmed, pissed off at the instructions and the directions from the people on the street, and drives all the way home to Angus in one shot. He was in Nova Scotia for maybe half an hour. Does that sound like the Raymond you know? Right. Raymond was the first to split his head open on a bridge, first to drive a Volkswagen into a dump truck, first to become a tradesman. You were the hockey player, the lacrosse player, the football player, the track star who, during the centenary year, ran as a team around the track at Banting until they accumulated mileage which stretched across Canada. And he was the first to get his own room. That's important. When Queen Elizabeth died, I realized something else was unique about you and not about the rest of us in the family. You were the only sibling born under the reign of King George VI. And you were born under Harry Truman as the President of the United States. Louis St. Laurent was the Prime Minister. Just for the record, I was the only one born under Diefenbaker. One of the things I've done with the gifts you've given me is to learn to see life from another's eyes. That gave me a new set of peers. Grandpa Callahan, for instance, was born in 1880, and he gave me a place to go back to, a grounding in history. Being born then meant that if the conditions had allowed, he would have sat in the lap of Tchaikovsky, who died in 1893, or Nietzsche, who died in 1900. Or the fact that Grandpa was born only 15 years after the Civil War. Suddenly, history becomes accessible. And now you, Raymond, not only did you give me a window on the 60s, but you gave me a window on life. Thank you, Raymond. From Joan. Dearest Raymond, I'm so glad Jeff asked us to start this new family tradition and that you are the first to hear how important you are to me. From time to time, from the time I was little, I remember being awed by my big brother. Everything you said and did was impressive. And although I was a little too scared of you in the early years to follow you around, I always paid close attention. I remember you came in the front door with your head injury after hitting the bridge. I would have done anything for you at that moment, even catch you if you'd fainted. I was so relieved to find out it was only skin deep. When you asked me to paint the numbers on your muscle car, I was honored and worried when I couldn't get the paint perfectly smooth, and was mortified, and you were so kind and said it was just what you wanted. I remember you taking several trips to the cottage to get my horse that wouldn't load onto the trailer, and being so patient. I hope you know how that incidents like this one remain such an important part of my life. After we all grew up and went our separate ways, family get-togethers were and are a special time to see you and hear everything new. Your kind and considerate interactions with family and extended family members are a shining light for our family, as you are an ambassador and a keeper of family histories. You are a most important person in my life, Ray. And although I don't call you as often as I should, you're in my thoughts every day. I love you so much. Joan. From Andrea. Andrea passed away a year ago, and I'm really glad that her words are part of the service today. Andrea, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Quoting poetry wouldn't mean much to you, Ray, I'm sure, but the love is definitely there. I was an annoying kid, but even then you were my protector. We used to go skating on the Sunday afternoons at the Bradford Arena. You always did up my skates, made sure I got on the ice, and off you went, doing ovals with 5-pound weights tapped to your boots. One time, a rather rambunctious kid knocked me down, and you came over to see if I was all right. And I remember the kid saying in a panicky voice, "I'm sorry, sir. It was an accident, sir." I've always been in such awe of you. You were the strong, silent type, a fierce and loyal friend to so many, so generous with your time and advice, and always ready to lend a hand. Your honesty and integrity and sense of fairness and all the things we were taught as children, but you lived it every day. And I really admire you for that. And I'm really sorry I nearly putting your Volkswagen VW through the fence. I had to move it away from the clothesline, and I generally thought I found reverse. From Jim. For me, my big brother Ray is confident, knows what he wants, and seeks them out, a pattern I learned in my life from Ray. He's there for advice, whether we ask it verbally or silently, seeing how Ray would do it. Unknown to Ray, he's been a trailblazer for me, that were it not for some of Ray's choices, I might be too reluctant to try. Starting a family and kids, taking on leadership roles, Ray as union steward and president, starting his own auto mechanic small business, buying a home. Ray's done all these things and given me the courage to try them and succeed. Particularly owning your own business is a big deal and is risky and takes guts to do. Ray owned his own auto mechanic business and was honest and hardworking. Now for me, having seen Ray operate and succeed in business, I had the confidence to open my own business. Not so scary. For me, Ray stands up for the small guy, and there's a hesitation to step up, speaking out for fairness to those who are bullied. This is a value I hold close. I still remember a number of times when he stood up for his kids and stood for our younger years. But Ray is very much a family guy, taking care of his loved ones. Ray and I share a love of vintage autos, and even though we don't share Barrett-Jackson auctions so much anymore, it becomes a pursuit of mine. One second here, right? There we go. We're on to the last video. Stop. Okay. We with you in a second? Yeah, sorry, Ray. There, is that better? Come on, man. Technology, don't you just love it? Oh, there we go. Okay. You don't want to see that. Just give me 1 second here. Nope, been there, done that. Yep. No matter how hard you practice, fate sometimes just. Let me try that this way. Stand by. There we go. So, it's time now to walk with Ray to the river. And as I sing this, I will invite you to stand up for Ray, if Ray stood up for you, as we just listen to this piece of music.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I'm worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on,
Thank you. Please be seated. Back to my notes. Ray was never far from the edge of things, the edge of laughter, the edge of anger, the edge of leaving, the edge of staying anyway. He grew up in a house where pressure lived in the walls. A sick father, a tired mother, 5 children, an old Irish grandfather standing like the weather in the kitchen. And somewhere in all that noise, a young man quietly decided he would help carry us. Not because he was asked, but because he saw it. That was Ray. He saw things. He saw weakness. He saw unfairness. He saw danger coming down the road before the rest of us did. Sometimes that made him protective, sometimes sharp, sometimes lonely. There are people who learn strength early, but tenderness late. Ray knew that road. At our supper table, words could land hard. Humor could become humiliation, and silence could last for days. Pride could tighten itself in like a knot no one knew how to untangle. And still, somehow, love stayed in the room. Bent, bruised, awkward, but there. That may be the most honest thing I can say about our family. Ray learned this over time, that there's a difference between winning and belonging. That realization cost him something, because once you understand the impact your life has had on others, you cannot unknow it. And I think there were moments he wished he could go back, speak softer, stay longer, listen better, untie a few knots before the rope snapped. But life does not hand out many rewinds. What it sometimes gives instead is another chance forward. And Ray took it. Excuse me. Ray took it with Sylvie, with Jess, with Nicholas. You could feel something settle in him. Less proving, less fighting, more room. Like a man who had spent years bracing for impact, finally discovering he could put his guard down without disappearing. That was his second 60s. Not youth, not rebellion, relief. And maybe that's why we ache today, because none of us only lost the strong, not only lost the strong brother, the funny brother, the muscle car brother, we lost the older Ray, the one who finally learned to stay. I took the time to write a poem from Ray to us. Ray says, "You don't have to hold the rope so tight now. I know we pulled hard sometimes, hard enough to leave marks on each other's hands, hard enough to make silence last too long. But I carried you with me, more than you know. Every laugh, every light, every fight, every mile of the road, every kitchen argument sounded like thunder, but somehow ended with supper on the table. That was us. You made me more than I would ever be alone. Jimmy taught me courage. Joan taught me gentleness. Andrea taught me loyalty. Jeffy taught me curiosity, humor, and how to see life sideways. And to you, Sylvie, you gave me a new chance. You knew what you were getting, and you took me anyway. And to you, Jess and Nicholas, you gave me belonging. If I stumbled, if I stung too hard sometimes, I held on to pride longer than I should have. Know this, I loved you the whole time, even when I didn't know how to say it precisely or properly, especially then. So don't remember me in only the hard places. Remember the laughter. Remember the radio too loud, the cottage roads, the teasing, the stories repeated badly, the cars, the hockey, the chaos. And remember that I stayed. And if you think of me now and then, don't picture me lost. Picture me finally untangling the knot, sitting somewhere peaceful, watching over you still, but without the weight this time. Thank you all for coming. Go in peace. Yeah, that's really the end. I guess I can play something else. Would you prefer Resurrection Shuffle or the? No, I'm kidding. Thank you.